guys love these Reddit videos, so I'm gonna make another one. Let's read some more scary Reddit stories. Join my Discord, follow my Instagram. I'm trying to hit 100K by the end of the year, and we're pretty close now, guys. I think we can do it. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, let's get straight into this. I live alone, so who keeps writing messages on my mirror? I turned 18 in 2008, and on the day of my birthday, for reasons I won't bore you with, I packed up my things and moved out. For 4 years, I lived in my car, working as a barista from 6 to 2 and as a line cook from 4 to 10. My plan was to work until I had enough money for my own place, and then to either go to college or get a, quote, real job. Looking back on it now, I don't know how I did it, but by 22, I'd saved up a decent sum of money and began my hunt for a semi-permanent place of residence. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and though housing prices weren't as bad as they are now, it was still a pricey county. After months of asking around, I was connected with Anders, an elderly man who was leasing a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in North Hollywood for far below market rate. The catch, because there's always a catch when it comes to affordable housing, was that the house had been terribly maintained. It had been unoccupied for a year and would need some serious TLC before some people could comfortably reside in it. I, however, had been living out of a car for 4 years. As long as the place had running water, it would be an upgrade for me. I moved into the house in fall 2012. Anders gave me a tour before I got settled. He was a short, joyful old man, well-meaning, but how do I put this? Maybe not the most focused as a result of his age. At one point during the tour, he showed me the bathroom, then the master bedroom, then the bathroom again, then the master bedroom again. He was about to walk into the bathroom for a third time before I gently guided him down the hall. The house itself was livable but weathered. Dim lighting from outdated fixtures cast long shadows over peeling wallpaper. The ceiling in many of the rooms was discolored from past leaks, the faucet in the kitchen sink was broken, the bathtub was badly chipped, and a few of the cabinet handles fell off in my hand. It was a rundown place, located in a bars on the window kind of neighborhood, but still, it was my place. I was smiling ear to ear when Anders gave me the keys. "It's a good house with good bones. You take care of it now," he instructed, which I found ironic. Before he left, he paused in the front doorway, drawing a hand to his chin as he looked behind me into the house. I tried to follow his gaze, but couldn't figure out what he was looking at. "Everything alright?" "Yes, just that something looks different about that bathroom, though I can't put my finger on what." "Ah well, it's a good house with good bones. You take care of it now." And with that, he gave me a nod and left me to my unpacking. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed living in a house. I didn't care how run down the place was, just having an accessible bathroom and a full-size mattress to sleep on made me feel like a king. After I'd spent a few days cleaning the place up, I invited my sister and her fiance over for dinner. I'm sure it sounds stupid, but my newly acquired ability to host company made me proud. In no time at all, I'd comfortably settled into my new home. That evening, after saying goodbye to my guests, I took a shower. The bathroom lacked a traditional above-the-sink mirror. Instead, it had a wide, full-length mirror mounted on the wall to the left of my vanity. When I exited the shower and stepped up to the glass, raising a hand to wipe the fog away, I noticed something odd. In the condensation, right at eye level, was the word "hi." I didn't know what to make of it. Somehow the letters seemed intentional. It was hard to pass off as simply the way the steam had settled. My sister had been in the bathroom just before she left. Maybe she had written the word on the mirror with her fingertip and the steam had only made the letters accessible after my shower. I almost texted her about it, but the message seemed ridiculous when I typed it out. Paranoid even. I wiped the mirror down and turned in for the night, and soon I forgot about it entirely. The following week, I received a promotion at one of my jobs, and while I was grateful for the additional income, my new position meant longer days. Additionally, I realized that a few of the house repairs were beyond my ability, and so I started outsourcing some work to contractors. It was annoying to only have the house to myself at night, but I didn't have another option with my busy schedule. Things were generally progressing smoothly, though every once in a while, in the middle of the night, I would be awoken by a sound that I couldn't quite place. When I next noticed writing on my mirror, I had been living in the house for a month. The second sighting occurred in much the same way as the first. I came back home after work and took a shower, and when I pushed the shower curtain back, I looked at the glass and saw, written in condensation, the words, "staying long." Now, I could pass 2 letters off as a coincidence, but 2 words? An entire question? That was no coincidence. Someone had been in my bathroom, and recently. I had contractors in and out of my house all the time, so one of them could have written the message, but why? I got dressed and put a hand on the bathroom doorknob, about to go back into my bedroom, when it occurred to me that whoever had written the message might still be around. I slowly cracked open the door, peering down the dark hallway in one direction, then the other. I listened very carefully, but heard nothing. I walked around my house, which didn't take long given its size, and looked for anything out of place. All of my doors were locked, all of my windows were shut, and none of my personal items had been disturbed. If someone had broken into my house, they were long gone by the time that I looked around. That second message put me on edge for days. I triple-checked that my windows and doors were locked each night. I looked in every potential hiding spot, of which there were few in my little house, after I came home from work and before I went to sleep. And yet, though I was certain that my house was secure, I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. A month passed without incident. I had almost started to feel at home in my new lodgings again until one Friday morning, I awoke just past 3 a.m. I couldn't immediately tell what had woken me. Often the house settled at night, creaking and groaning in ways that made it sound alive. But in that moment, the house was silent. It was only after I turned my head to the side did I realize that my bedroom door, which I was certain I had shut, was wide open. I stared down the hallway, feeling as though I was gazing into a black hole. The darkness was abyssal. I kept waiting for my eyes to adjust, waiting for them to pick out the familiar shapes of my home, but they never did. I couldn't see a thing, so why did I feel like something could see me? Like there was something in the house with me, just feet beyond the threshold of my bedroom, watching, waiting. Somehow, I found the courage to rise from my bed and walk toward the door. When I made it to the handle, I grabbed it and slammed the door shut. I didn't investigate further, didn't so much as stick my head out into the hall for a closer look. My bedroom door didn't have a lock, none of the doors except for the bathroom did, so I dragged my bookcase in front of the door. It was a small bookcase and an intruder could probably ram the door open anyway if they wanted to, but not before the sound at least alerted me. When morning came and I had to leave the house for work, I genuinely considered exiting my house through the window. I was almost late by the time I had worked up the nerve myself to look around the house before I left. As always, I found nothing amiss. After work, when I reluctantly returned home for the night, I ate a quick dinner and hopped in the shower. I remember standing in the tub for a long time, mulling over my predicament. I'd heard horror stories about people secretly living in other people's homes. Maybe I had become a victim of a frog without even knowing. But if that was the case, then where the hell were they? There was nowhere to hide in that tiny house. I'd torn the place apart multiple times by then, checking every cabinet and closet. The inside of the house couldn't be accessed from the crawl space, and the air vents were too small for a person to fit in. Suddenly, I heard a click, so tiny that I'd almost missed it entirely. I tore back the shower curtain, gripping the shampoo bottle like I was about to bludgeon an intruder to death with it. As I'd come to expect, there was no one in the shower, but there was a new message on the mirror. This one was bold, the easiest to read out of any of the messages I'd received so far. It was 3 words long. I see you. Some awful amalgam of fear, confusion, and anger made my stomach churn. Ultimately, the latter emotion rose above the rest. I hastily dried off and threw on some clothes, then grabbed my phone from where I'd left it on the bathroom counter. I punched in Andrew's number and glared at that damn mirror as I listened to the phone ring again and again. I started to think it was too late for him to be awake when he suddenly picked up. He started to ask me how I was faring in my new lodgings before I cut him off. I need you to tell me if there's some way that a person could be getting into the house, I said. Every night, I check every window and door, I check every cupboard, closet, and cabinet, and still, things are amiss. You need to let me know if there's some entry point I'm not aware of. Anders didn't seem to entirely understand what I was asking. What? What's getting in? You let me know if you're having rat troubles. My last tenant before you had rat troubles sometimes. Yeah, sure, I got rats. Besides the doors and windows, how could they be getting in? Well, there's the vents, of course. And there's a chimney once, though we had it sealed up a good long while ago. And there's also the crawl space, of course, though I'm sure you've already poked around down there. Though I knew the home had a crawl space, I'd never had much reason to investigate it. I was never able to find the entrance, even after ripping up all the carpeting in the house. Likely hardwood had been installed over the access door, making it an unlikely point of entry for an intruder. How do I get down to the crawl space? Yes, you should give the crawl space a gander. I barely stopped myself from smashing the phone into the counter. I plan to. Where can I find the entrance? That'll be on the floor of the bathroom closet. I looked around the room. Surely I'd misheard him. Either that or he was confused again. What? I know it's an odd place for it, but it's only there because that room didn't always used to be a bathroom. The bathroom doesn't have a closet. Sure it does, just to the left of the vanity. I looked at the mirror, at that long, oversized mirror. I'd always found it odd for a bathroom of that size to have a built-in floor-to-ceiling mirror. What was it that Anders had said when he first visited, that something had looked different about the bathroom? Setting my phone down next to the sink, I stepped up close to the glass. I spent a few moments feeling around the frame, looking for a latch, then I grabbed a portion of the right side of the frame in 2 hands. After one hard yank, the mirror swung open like a door, revealing a large walk-in closet. Anders was saying something on the other end of the line, but I was too stunned to answer. There was a square-shaped hole at the back of the closet which I assumed led down to the crawl space beneath the house. The closet floor was littered with all kinds of trash, filthy sheets, fast food containers, beer cans, and I realized some of my own items. Little things I'd thought I misplaced. A sock, a toothbrush, a comb, and a small, framed photograph of me, my sister, and our old family dog. I crouched down to pick up the photo, perched in the doorway as I studied my younger, smiling self. I heard Anders saying my name over the phone, except the voice didn't sound like Anders at all. It was too deep, too clear, too close. When I looked up, a man was peeking out at me from the hole in the floor. He smiled at me, his eyes wide and pupils blown, his smile so wide it looked painful and his hair long and matted. He was only visible from the neck up, and the harsh lighting made it look like a disembodied head was grinning at me from the back of the closet. Horrified, I rose to my feet and ran. I didn't stop running until I made it to my car, which I promptly drove to my sister's house. The next day, I drove to the police station to file a report. An officer met me at the house to check the scene, and I showed him the hidden closet, which indeed had an entrance to the crawl space. My best guess was that the intruder was entering my crawl space from the small door on the side of my house. He'd likely been squatting in the house during the year in which it sat unoccupied, and when he saw that it was being prepared for sale, he had disguised the closet door so as to keep a little room for himself. Why he decided to stay or why he was leaving me messages, I can't say. From his actions and from what little I saw of him, I think it's safe to assume that he wasn't of sound mind. Unfortunately, the man was never found. For all I know, he's still in the same neighborhood. Hell, he might even be in the same house. I moved across the county afterwards and have lived in studio apartments ever since. The thought of living in a big house with all those rooms and corners and places to hide gives me the creeps. It's not just houses that the incident soured for me, but mirrors as well. These days, when I visit a friend or stay at a hotel, I always have to carefully inspect the bathroom mirrors, shining a light directly into their faces and tapping a finger against the glass. Because the worst detail of that whole ordeal was that, when revisiting the bathroom with a police officer, I stepped into the old closet, closed the door, and looked into the mirror. Instead of my reflection, I saw the officer's face on the other side of the glass. The train I usually take has changed its course. It is now headed nowhere. The gentle sway of the train car had always been soothing to me. As a regional sales manager for a large pharmaceutical company, I spent more time on railways than I did in my own bed. The rhythmic clack of wheels on tracks was my lullaby, the ever-changing landscape outside my window a constant companion. This particular Tuesday evening found me on yet another overnight train, heading from Chicago to New York for a critical meeting. I settled into my usual routine, laptop out, spreadsheets open, a cup of mediocre coffee cooling on the fold-down tray. The first sign that something was amiss came about 3 hours into the journey. I glanced at my watch, frowning slightly. We should have reached Cleveland by now, but the cityscape outside remained stubbornly rural. Fields and forest rolled by, bathed in the eerie glow of a full moon. I flagged down a passing attendant, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a pinched expression. "Excuse me," I said, "but shouldn't we have reached Cleveland by now?" She gave me a strange look, her eyes slightly unfocused. "Cleveland? I'm sorry, sir, but I'm not familiar with that stop. Perhaps you're thinking of a different route?" Before I could respond, she hurried away, disappearing into the next car. I sat back, puzzled. How could she not know Cleveland? It was a major stop on this line. I shook my head, chalking it up to a new employee's confusion, and returned to my work. As the hours ticked by, my unease grew. The landscape outside never changed, an endless loop of moonlit fields and shadowy forests. My phone had lost signal long ago, and my watch seemed to be malfunctioning, its hand spinning wildly before stopping altogether. I decided to stretch my legs, hoping a walk through the train might clear my head. As I made my way through the cars, I noticed how eerily quiet it was. The few passengers I saw sat motionless in their seats, staring blankly ahead or out the windows. In the dining car, I found an elderly man hunched over a cup of coffee. His wrinkled hands trembled slightly as he lifted the mug to his lips. "Excuse me," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I don't mean to bother you, but have you noticed anything strange about this journey?" The old man's eyes focused on me, a flicker of recognition passing across his face. "You're new, aren't you?" he said, his voice a dry whisper. "First time on this line?" I nodded, a chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean, this line? This is just the regular Chicago to New York route, isn't it?" He let out a wheezing laugh that turned into a cough. "Oh, my boy," he said, shaking his head. "This ain't no regular route. This here's the last line. Ain't no New York we're headed to." "I don't understand," I said, my heart beginning to race. "Where are we going then?" The old man leaned in close, the smell of stale coffee on his breath. "Nowhere," he whispered. "Everywhere. This train don't stop, son. It just keeps going, round and round, world without end." I jerked back, convinced I was dealing with a madman. "That's impossible," I said. "Every train has to stop eventually." He just smiled a sad, knowing expression. "You go on believing that if it makes you feel better, but mark my words, you'll see. We all figure it out sooner or later." I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. "You're crazy," I muttered, backing away. "This is just a normal train. We'll be in New York by morning." As I turned to leave, the old man called out, "What's your name, son?" I hesitated for a moment before answering. Jack Thurston." He nodded slowly. "Well, Jack Thurston, I'm Howard. I'll be seeing you around. We've got all the time in the world, after all." I hurried back to my seat, Howard's words echoing in my mind. It was nonsense, of course. Trains didn't just go on forever. There had to be a rational explanation for the delays and the strange behavior of the staff. As I sunk into my seat, I noticed a young woman across the aisle, furiously scribbling in a notebook. Her long dark hair fell in a curtain around her face, and her leg bounced with nervous energy. "Excuse me," I said, leaning towards her. "I don't suppose you know when we're due to arrive in New York, do you?" She looked up, her eyes wide and slightly manic. "New York," she repeated, letting out a hysterical giggle. "Oh, honey, there is no New York. Not anymore. There's only the train." I felt my blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I've been on this train for, I don't know how long. Days, weeks. It all blurs together. But I figured it out. We're not going anywhere. We're stuck in a loop, a never-ending journey to nowhere." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "That's impossible. You're just confused. Maybe you fell asleep and missed your stop." She laughed again, a sound devoid of humor. "Oh, I wish it were that simple. But look around you. Have you seen anyone get off? Have we stopped at any stations? This isn't a normal train, Jack. This is something else entirely." I startled at the sound of my own name. "How do you know my name?" She smiled, a sad, knowing expression. "I heard you talking to old Howard in the dining car. I'm Lisa, by the way. Welcome aboard the Eternal Express." I stood up abruptly, my head spinning. "This is insane. All of you are insane. I'm going to find the conductor and get some answers." As I stormed off towards the front of the train, I heard Lisa call out behind me. "Good luck with that, but don't say I didn't warn you." I made my way through car after car, each one identical to the last. The same faded blue seats, the same flickering overhead lights, the same blank-faced passengers staring into nothingness. How long had I been walking? It felt like hours, but that was impossible in a train of normal length. Finally, I reached what should have been the engine car, but instead of a locomotive, I found myself in another passenger car, exactly like all the others. I spun around, disoriented. How could this be? A hand on my shoulder made me jump. I turned to find the attendant from earlier, her pinched face now twisted into an unnaturally wide smile. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her voice sickly sweet. "I need to speak to the conductor," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "There's been some kind of mistake. This train should have reached New York by now." Her smile never wavered. "I'm sorry, sir, but there is no conductor, and there is no mistake. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." I backed away from her, my heart pounding. What is this place? What's happening? She tilted her head, her eyes suddenly black and empty. "This is the last line, Mr. Thurston. The train that never stops, never ends. You bought a ticket and now you're on the ride of eternity. I turned and ran, pushing past confused passengers, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a dream, a hallucination, anything but reality. I burst into the space between the cars, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. The door to the next car was just a few feet away. If I could reach it, maybe I could find a way off this nightmare train. But as I stepped forward, the gap between the cars seemed to stretch. The next door moved further and further away, no matter how fast I ran. The wind howled around me, drowning out my screams of frustration and fear. Suddenly, a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me back into the car. I fell to the floor, gasping for breath. Lisa stood over me, her pale face in the flickering light. "Are you crazy?" she hissed. "You can't go out there, between the cars. That's where it gets you." "Where what gets you?" I asked, my voice shaking. She helped me to my feet, glancing nervously at the door. "The thing that runs this train, the thing that brought us all here. Trust me, you don't want to meet it." As if on cue, a low rumbling sound echoed through the car. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. Part machine, part animal, all wrong. The lights flickered more intensely, and for a moment I could have sworn I saw something massive moving in the shadow between the cars. Lisa pulled me back to our seats, her grip on my arm almost painful. "Listen to me," she said urgently. "I know this is hard to accept. God knows I've fought against it for I don't even know how long. But fighting only makes it worse. You have to accept where you are or you'll go mad." I slumped in my seat, my mind reeling. "But why? Why is this happening? What is this place?" She shook her head. "I don't know. None of us do. All we know is that we're here on this never-ending journey. Some think it's hell, others purgatory. Old Howard thinks it's some kind of cosmic mistake. Me? I think it's just the universe's way of saying tough luck, kiddo." I looked out the window, watching the same moonlight landscape roll by. How many times have I seen those same fields, those same trees? How long would I continue to see them? "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lisa gave me a sad smile. "We ride, we talk, we try to stay sane, and we hope that maybe, just maybe, one day we'll reach the last stop." As the train rolled on into the endless night, I realized with a sinking heart that my journey had only just begun, and my destination? That remained a terrifying mystery. Days blended into nights, and nights into days. The monotonous rhythm of the train became the backdrop of my existence. I lost how many times I'd watched the same scenery roll by, how many times I'd watched the length of the train, hoping to find something, anything different. Lisa became my anchor in the sea of madness. We spent hours talking, sharing stories of the lives before the train. She'd been a journalist, always chasing the next big story. "Guess I found it," she would say with a bitter laugh, gesturing at our surroundings. Old Howard joined us often, his weathered face a map of the time he'd spent on this hellish journey. "Been riding this rail for longer than I can remember," he'd say, his eyes distant. "Seen folks come and go. Some just disappear. Others," he'd trail off, shaking his head. I learned to fear the spaces between the cars. Sometimes late at night, when the train's rhythm seemed to falter, we'd hear things, scraping, slithering sounds. Once I caught a glimpse of something massive and dark undulating past the windows. Lisa pulled me away before I could get a better look. "Trust me," she said, her face pale. "You don't want to know." The other passengers were a mix of the resigned and the mad. Some, like us, tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Others had given in to despair, sitting in the same spots day after day, staring blankly at nothing. And then there were those who had lost their minds entirely, prowling the cars with wild eyes and incoherent ramblings. One such soul was a man that we called the Preacher, tall and menacing with a tangled beard and eyes that burned with fanatical fervor. He would roam the train, shouting about sin and redemption. "We're all here for a reason," he'd bellow, spittle flying from his lips. "This is our punishment, our penance. Repent and maybe, just maybe, you'll find your way off this damn train." Most ignored him, but some listened. I watched as he gathered a small following, passengers desperate for any explanation, any hope of escape. It was on what I guessed to be my 100th day on the train that things took a darker turn. I was jolted awake by screams coming from the front of the car. Lisa was already on her feet, her face a mask of terror. "They've done it," she whispered. "They've actually done it. I followed her gaze to see a group of the preacher's followers dragging a struggling passenger towards the door between the cars. The preacher stood by, his arms raised, chanting something I couldn't make out over the victim's screams. "What are they doing?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "A sacrifice," old Howard said, his voice grim. "Fools think they can appease whatever's running this train, buy their way off with blood." I started to move towards them, but Lisa held me back. "Don't," she hissed. "There's nothing we can do, just don't watch." But I couldn't look away. The group reached the door with a final triumphant cry from the preacher. They shoved their victim out into the space between cars. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came a sound, a wet, tearing noise that would haunt my nightmares for days to come. The door slammed shut, cutting off the screams. The preacher turned to face the rest of us, his eyes wild with excitement. "It is done," he shouted. "The unworthy has been cast out. Soon we shall reach our final destination." But the train rolled on unchanged. Hours passed, then days. No final stop. No salvation. Just the endless journey and the growing madness of the preacher and his flock. More sacrifices followed. The train's population dwindled as passenger after passenger was thrown to whatever lurked between the cars. Those of us who refused to join the preacher's cult banded together, watching each other's backs, sleeping in shifts. It was one of my watch shifts when I first saw her. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8, wandering alone through the car. Her pink dress was pristine, her blonde hair neatly braided. She looked so out of place in this nightmare that for a moment I thought I was hallucinating. "Hello," I said softly, not wanting to scare her. "Are you lost?" She turned to me and I had to stifle a gasp. Her eyes were completely black, like empty voids in her small face. When she spoke, her voice was old, ancient even. "Lost," she repeated, tilting her head. "No, I don't think so. I know exactly where I am. Do you?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are you?" I whispered. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just a bit too sharp. "I'm a passenger, just like you. We're all passengers here, Jack. All of us riding the rails to eternity." "How do you know my name?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "I know everyone's name," she said, her black eyes boring into mine. "I know why they're here. I know their sins, their fears, their deepest, darkest secrets." She took a step closer. "Would you like to know yours, Jack?" I backed away, my heart pounding. "Stay away from me," I said, my voice shaking. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Jack, you can't run from me. You can't run from any of this. You bought your ticket. Now you have to ride." I blinked, and she was gone. Just vanished as if she'd never been there at all. I slumped in my seat, my mind reeling. Was I losing it? Had I finally snapped like so many others on this godforsaken train? I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, Lisa was shaking me awake. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Jack," she said urgently. "Something's happening. The train, it's slowing down." I sat up, suddenly alert. She was right. For the first time since this nightmare began, I could feel the train decelerating. The familiar clack of wheels on tracks was slowing, becoming more distinct. Passengers were stirring, looking around in confusion and hope. Even the preacher and his followers had stopped their mad ranting, staring out the windows with a mix of fear and anticipation. "Are we stopping?" I asked, hardly daring to believe it. Old Howard shook his head, his expression grim. "Don't get your hopes up, son. In all my time here, I've never known this train to stop. Whatever's happening is not gonna be good." As if to punctuate his words, the lights in the car began to flicker more intensely than ever before. The temperature dropped rapidly, our breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. And then, with a great screeching of metal on metal, the train ground to a halt. For a moment, there was absolute silence. We all held our breath, hoping, fearing. Then, with a hiss of hydraulics, the doors slid open. "Finally," the preacher cried, pushing his way towards the exit. "Our salvation is at hand. Come, brothers and sisters, let us..." His words were cut off by a scream of pure terror. As he stepped off the train, something grabbed him. Something huge and dark and impossible. In the blink of an eye, he was gone, leaving nothing behind but a spreading pool of blood on the platform. Chaos erupted. Passengers pushed and shoved, some trying to get off the train, others desperately attempting to close the doors. I lost sight of Lisa in the pandemonium, and through it all I heard laughter. that same glass-like sound from before. I turned to see the little girl with the black eyes, standing calmly in the middle of the mayhem. "Welcome to your last stop, Jack," she said, her voice cutting through the screams and cries. "Are you ready to get off?" As I stared into those bottomless black eyes, I realized with dawning horror that our endless journey had only been the beginning. The real nightmare was just starting, and somewhere in the distance I heard the sound of a train whistle signaling the departure to our next unknown destination. The chaos around me faded into a dull roar as I stared into the little girl's black eyes. Time seemed to slow, and in that moment I had a sudden crystal clear realization. This was a test. The endless train ride, the maddening repetition, the horrors we witnessed, it had all been leading to this moment of choice. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not getting off. Not here. Not like this." The girl's smile faltered for a split second, a crack in her otherworldly composure. "You don't have a choice, Jack. Everyone has to get off eventually." I stood my ground, even as I heard more screams from the platform, more passengers being dragged into the darkness. "There's always a choice. You told me I bought a ticket for this ride. Well, I'm not ready for it to end." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't stay on the train forever, Jack. It doesn't work like that." "Watch me," I growled, turning away from her and pushing through the panicked crowd. I had to find Lisa and Howard. We'd survived this long together. I wasn't about to leave them now. I spotted Howard first, huddled in a corner, his eyes wide with terror. "Come on," I said, grabbing his arm. "We need to move." "Where?" he asked, his voice trembling. "There's nowhere to go. It's got us. It's finally got us." I shook him, perhaps more roughly than I intended. "Listen to me. This isn't the end. It's just another part of the journey. But we have to stick together. Now help me find Lisa." Something in my voice must have reached him because he nodded, stumbling to his feet. We pushed through the crowd, searching desperately for Lisa's familiar face. We found her near the front of the car, trying to pull other passengers back from the door. "Lisa," I called out. "We have to go." She turned, relief flooding her face when she saw us. "Go where?" she asked as she reached us. "In case you haven't noticed, we're a little short on options here." I pointed towards the back of the train. "We keep going. This thing has to end somewhere, and I don't think it's here." As if in response to my words, I heard the train whistle again, louder this time. The engine was starting up. "It's leaving," Howard said, his eyes wide. "We have to get off now, or we'll be trapped forever," I finished for him. "I've got news for you, Howard. We're already trapped. Have been since we first stepped on board. But now we have a chance to find the real way out." Lisa looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You think this is all part of it, don't you? The final test?" I nodded. "It has to be, and I'm not failing it by giving in now." The train lurched, beginning to move. Around us, the last of the passengers were either fleeing onto the platform or collapsing in despair. "It's now or never," I said. "Are you with me?" Lisa grabbed my hand without hesitation. Howard hesitated for a moment, looking longingly at the door, but then took Lisa's other hand. "All right," he said. "Let's see where this crazy train takes us." As the train picked up speed, we made our way towards the back, pushing against the tide of terrified passengers. The little girl appeared again, her face contorted with rage. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "You have to get off. Everyone gets off." "Not today," I told her, pushing past. We reached the final car just as the platform disappeared from view. Through the windows, we could see only darkness. Not the familiar darkness of night, but an absolute void, empty of all light and substance. The train picked up speed, rattling and shaking more violently than ever before. We huddled together, bracing ourselves against the walls of the car. "What now?" Lisa yelled over the noise. We wait, and we don't let go. The darkness outside seemed to press in on us, seeping through the windows like a living thing. The lights in the car flickered and died, plunging us into blackness. I could feel Lisa's hand in mine, Howard's presence at my side, but I couldn't see them. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the shaking stopped. The oppressive darkness lifted, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the train began to slow. Sunlight, real, warm, beautiful sunlight, streamed through the windows. I blinked, my eyes unused to the brightness after so long in the train's artificial light. As my vision cleared, I saw that we were pulling into a station. A real station, with people waiting on the platform, going about their daily lives as if nothing was amiss. The train came to a gentle stop, and the doors opened with a familiar hiss. For a long moment, none of us moved, afraid that this was just another trick, another test. Then Howard let out a whoop of joy and rushed for the door. Lisa and I followed, stepping out onto the platform on shaky legs. The station sign read Grand Central Terminal. We were in New York. We had made it. As we stood there, breathless and disbelieving, I felt a tug on my sleeve. I turned to see the little girl with the black eyes, but now, in the sunlight, she looked different, normal. Just a regular kid with brown eyes and a confused expression. "Excuse me," she said, her voice high and childish. "Is this the train to Chicago?" I knelt down to her level, smiling gently. "No, sweetheart. This train just came from Chicago, but trust me, you don't want to get on it." She nodded, thanked me, and then ran off to find her parents. I watched her go, a weight lifting from my chest. Lisa squeezed my hand. "Is it really over?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I looked at her, then Howard, and then at the bustling station around us. "Yeah," I said, finally allowing myself to believe it. "I think it is." As we made our way out of the station and into the bright New York morning, I knew that the memories of our endless journey would stay with us forever. But we had faced the darkness, made our choice, and found our way back to the light. And if I ever saw a train again, it would be too soon. The buses at night aren't actually buses. I've always been a bit of a night owl, usually finding myself wide awake well past midnight. It's a habit I've carried since my college days, where late night study sessions were the norm, and it's never really left me. After graduating, I moved to Los Angeles for a job, hoping the city's endless energy would suit my nocturnal lifestyle. But despite the time that's passed, I'm still not used to everything. The sprawling neighborhoods and the constant noise. My initial plan was to move in with my parents, but we had a falling out just before my move. The argument stemmed from my grandmother's will. When she passed, I was left out entirely while my parents inherited everything. Feeling betrayed and resentful, I decided I couldn't live under their roof. With limited options and time running out, I had to settle for a crummy apartment in the shadier part of town. My apartment overlooks one of the busier streets in the area, so I've become quite accustomed to the sounds of traffic at all hours. The constant hum of engines and distant sirens have become a kind of white noise that usually lulls me to sleep. However, something strange has been happening lately that's left me unable to sleep. It started out a few weeks ago. I'd be up late reading or watching TV and I'd hear the buses going by. Normally, the last bus in our town runs until 11 p.m., but recently, I've been hearing buses rumble by well past that time. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe the city extended the hours or added a new route, but curiosity got the better of me. One night, around 1 a.m., I got the courage to peek out of my window. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so, and the air was heavy with that peculiar stillness only found in the dead of night. As I scanned the street, I saw it. A bus, idling at the stop of the corner, its interior lights flickering dimly. I watched for a few minutes, waiting to see if anyone would get on or off, but the bus just sat there. The sight left me unsettled, but I couldn't muster the nerve to go outside. Over the next few nights, the bus kept appearing at the same time, idling on the same spot. Each time I would watch from my window, my curiosity and unease growing with each sighting. Finally, one night, I decided enough was enough. I threw on my jacket and headed downstairs. The streets were just as silent and still as before, amplifying the sense of dread that had been building inside of me. As I reached the corner of my block, I saw the bus again, its lights still flickering, and I knew I had to find out what was going on. Approaching the bus, I took a closer look. It looked like a standard city bus. Nothing about it screamed unusual or out of the ordinary. Its exterior was weathered, the paint chipped and peeling in spots, but otherwise it seemed like any other bus. My heart pounded as I hesitated, standing just outside the door. The door creaked open on rusty hinges, the sound piercing the stillness of the night and sending a shiver down my spine. Without hesitation, I climbed aboard, dropping an old worn dollar bill into the box as I made my way to the back of the bus. The driver, a shadowy figure in a worn uniform, didn't speak or even look at me, just stared straight ahead as if I didn't exist. I settled into one of the seats near the rear, feeling a sense of unease creeping over me. The bus interior was dimly lit, with flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the worn, cracked seats. The air smelled faintly of mildew and old leather, mixing with the metallic scent of rust. Graffiti covered the walls and the backs of seats, some of it recent, some of it old and faded. I noticed a few seats with stuffing spilling out, torn from years of use and neglect. The windows were grimy and cobwebs clung to corners, swaying slightly with the motion of the bus. The floor was littered with old ticket stubs, wrappers, and other debris, adding to the sense of decay and abandonment. As the bus started moving, I glanced out the window, expecting to see familiar streets. Instead, the scenery quickly changed to a desolate area filled with old warehouses and empty roads. The warehouses were dilapidated, their windows broken, and walls covered in graffiti. Rusted machinery and abandoned vehicles littered the grounds, creating an eerie post-apocalyptic landscape. My heart began to race and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I looked around, noticing the eerie emptiness outside. Not a single car or person in sight. I pulled out my phone, hoping to check my location, but there was no signal. Oddly enough, I noticed the battery was at 2%, even though it had been fully charged when I left. The screen flickered uselessly before going dark. Panic surged through me as I realized something was terribly wrong. Desperate, I tried to walk towards the front of the bus, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. Each step was a struggle, my movements slow and labored. I reached out to steady myself, my fingers brushing against the cold, warm metal of the seats. The air inside felt heavy, as if it were pressing down on me, making it even harder to move. "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice trembling, but the driver remained silent. His eyes fixed on the road ahead, completely unresponsive. His face was partially obscured by the dim light, giving him an almost ghostly appearance. I fumbled for the door, trying to push it open with all my might, but it wouldn't budge. Panic rising, I glanced around and spotted the emergency release lever. I grabbed it, yanking hard, but nothing happened. The lever felt rusted, stuck in place as if it hadn't been used in years. I pounded on the window, hoping to attract someone's attention, but the streets outside were deserted, the buildings looming like silent sentinels in the dark. As I continued to struggle, I noticed the bus seemed to be moving faster, the scenery outside blurring into a nightmarish haze. The desolation and decay of the warehouses gave way to an even more unsettling landscape, one that seemed to shift and change with each passing second. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat of fear and desperation. Desperate, I turned back to the driver, only to find the seat empty. My stomach dropped and panic washed over me like a tidal wave. Sweat started to bead on my forehead as my breath came in shallow, rapid gasps. The reality of the situation hit me hard, and I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. I looked around frantically, my eyes darting to the windows and the door, seeking any way out. The windows were clouded with grime, and the door remained stubbornly shut. I noticed the dashboard covered in strange, glowing symbols that I couldn't understand. The symbols pulsed within a natural light, casting eerie shadows on the cracked vinyl of the driver's seat. The sight of them made my skin crawl, a deep sense of unease settling in my gut. Desperation mounting, I pressed buttons and pulled levers, hoping to stop the bus or open the doors, but nothing worked. Each button I pressed gave a faint, unresponsive click, and the levers felt stiff and immovable under my trembling fingers. My heart pounded louder with each passing second, the fear gripping me tighter. The symbols on the dashboard seemed to glow brighter, as if mocking my futile attempts to escape. My mind raced, filled with 1,000 thoughts, and none at all. I was trapped, and the bus hurtled forward into the unknown, carrying me with it. I could feel the oppressive weight of the situation pressing down on me, suffocating me with its intensity. Every creak of the bus, every flicker of the lights only served to heighten my terror. Suddenly, I felt a blunt force hit the back of my head. Pain exploded in my skull and my vision blurred. I tried to stay conscious, but the darkness quickly swallowed me. It felt like being submerged in a black, icy sea, the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment I couldn't move, the terror of the dream still gripping me. The memory of the bus and its ominous interior flashed through my mind, mixing with the lingering pain in my head. Slowly I glanced around, disoriented before realizing I was safe in my own bed. The familiar side of my room provided some comfort, but the remnants of fear lingered like a haunting shadow. As I sat up, I felt something crumpled in my hand. Pulling it out, I found a dollar bill, the same one I had mechanically dropped into the fare box on the bus. Its edges were creased and the surface slightly worn, as if it had seen many hands before mine. But what froze my blood was the message scrawled across it in shaky handwriting. "Next time, you won't wake up." The words seemed to burn into the paper, each letter a twisted promise of something malevolent lurking just beyond my perception. Fear clenched at my heart as I stared at the words, the memory of the nightmare still fresh in my mind. Had it all been just a dream? I turned the dollar bill over in my hands, the chilling message glaring up at me. A shiver ran through me. I had to know. Was there really something sinister at play, or was my mind simply playing tricks on me? As the days passed, the memory of the nightmare lingered, haunting me like a shadow. I found myself avoiding the late-night streets, the once familiar sounds now tinged with an unsettling edge. The city's nocturnal symphony of distant sirens and the hum of traffic became a haunting backdrop to my paranoia. No matter how hard I tried to distract myself, the image of that empty bus and the chilling message on the dollar bill remained etched in my mind like a sinister graffiti. Then, one night, as I lay awake in bed, the silence was shattered by a distant rumble. The low growl of an engine, unmistakably the sound of a bus pulling up to the stop outside my window. My heart froze in my chest as I listened, the fear creeping back in like an unwelcome specter. David watches me. I call him David. He has been watching me. In the last month or so, I have seen horrors beyond my own understanding. Growing up, I have been a massive fan of the horror genre. When I was young, before I could remember everything clearly, my mother would take me and my older sibling to the library to get Goosebumps CDs. I must have been no younger than 3, maybe 4. This is what my mother told me anyways. But that is neither here nor there. This is just to say I was not easy to scare growing up, and I'm still not easy to scare. I was born in Montana on the 3rd of March 2003, and after I turned 4 or 5, my dad had to get a different job as the housing crisis had begun. He had no college degree or any experience that would be considered worthwhile, so he would take what he could get. That would lead us to move into Sheridan, Wyoming. Sheridan is just under the Montana border with a couple thousand people living there. We moved there because of the grandparents on my mom's side. They moved here way back, raising both my mom and uncle in this small town. With the help of that family, my dad got a job working as a teller for a bank. Not the most lucrative way of making money, but a way to make money nonetheless. And while this move to nowhere did not affect me, my older sister was devastated. I had no school friends, I was just in preschool. My older sister, on the other hand, who had been in elementary school for some time, cried the whole car ride. My younger sister, born 3 years after me, didn't even know what was going on. For me, everything was fine for years despite my family having no money. I had the whole school experience with things such as puppy love, after-school activities, and spending time with friends. On birthdays or Christmas, after I started to understand the financial situation my parents were in, I tried not asking for expensive toys or gadgets in an attempt to make life easier for my parents, and for me to be less disappointed. The 5 of us were happy. Of course, all the other kids my age thought I was crazy. I didn't have a phone, the only console I had was the Wii U had come out, and all the food we ate was great value or something similar to Walmart brand food. I was not popular, but overall I was well liked, and I would continue to embrace this life I built until middle school, 6th to 8th grade in Sheridan, when my first encounter happened. I remember it being winter as snow was everywhere. The house we had in Sheridan was walking distance from the middle school. Back in those days, the neighbor kids, my older sister, and I would walk to and from school every day. It wasn't rare for one of us to stay a little longer to talk to a teacher or go do something else completely. We were all independent individuals. Hell, one of the neighbor kids only walked to school with us and not once walked back with us. During the winter, the group largely resembled that of the kids from A Christmas Story during the colder months, minus being chased. One day, I would stay at school a little later than usual, and I had told the group to leave me behind. My English teacher wanted me to finish a project I had. She was worried as I was terrible with doing homework. I don't exactly remember if I was finished or not, probably not. I was a bit airheaded and typically forgot what all happened at school by the time that I walked home. By the time I was outside walking home, the sun had began to set. Not too unusual as it gets dark around 5 during the winter months. This meant if you had extracurriculars in that time, you almost always went home as the sun was setting. Something I didn't do too often at the time, meaning this was a first to me. It wasn't eerie or anything, just a different time in the same place. The night sky was clear, but the air was freezing. My glasses would fog up as I breathed, trying to contain the heat leaving my mouth by having my coat cover the lower half of my face. The route I took home brought me through Kendrick Park, a lovely place in the spring, summer, and fall, but dull and lifeless in the winter. There is this path that goes up this hill that splits a miniature forest in half. This was before they built an improved path below the parking lot of the school to keep the hill in place. That wooded area always seemed much more vast and full as a kid than they actually were. We'd play in them often, tag and such, for hours, never seeming to reach any ends. Anyway, I was marching down this path, careful not to slip on the ice. There were, or are, lights that lined the path, illuminating the snow ahead of me. And of course, like your typical horror movie, there was a shuffling in the trees. That night was the first time I saw David. That is what I called him, and that's what I still call him. David was a tall, nude man that terrified me. I'm not sure of his motives, but I'd say he was hunting me at times. It wasn't until I reached the bottom of the hill did I turn around to see him. He had no genitals, thank God. But he was just standing there in this cold weather, no clothing, no fur, just the mist being expelled through his mouth. I could only stare into his dark eyes, the pupils seeming never-ending. It felt like an eternity, but it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes before I started to run. I ran, I began to sob, afraid to turn around, stumbling every so often as the weight of my backpack made it difficult to keep my balance. I'd make it home that night. I'm not even sure if David even chased me. Crashing through the front door, my mom came to comfort me quick after hearing me cry. I don't remember much after that. According to my older sister, I blurted out something about a naked tall man whose eyes were not his own. Mom called the cops, but they didn't find anyone, or they couldn't find anyone. My mom was afraid, mad, confused. She would tell Dad what I said once he got home, and eventually even my grandfather caught wind of what happened. The two of them would go out and search with the cops without much success. The man was gone. I would later tell my sister about David. She had the idea of giving him his name to make it easier for me to tell her. I don't know if she believed me at the time. She was born a skeptic like everyone in my family. Her reaction was one of confusion, but after that night, she would always walk closer to me when she could. She probably thought I just saw a man, just like my parents and police thought. The neighbor kids had took note of the police from the previous night. They would ask my sister and I, neither of us knowing what to say. I wouldn't say anything. My sister would speak for me, lying, saying that I found a lost dog or something, and the police were just picking it up as it ran out the front door. Something like that. They didn't push for more details. I wouldn't see David again for months, maybe over a year. I can't remember. Those details seemed to fade with time. I had almost completely forgotten about David, but the fear from my first experience followed me even after the memory disappeared. I still remember the heat of the day from the second encounter I saw with David. It was summer. I couldn't tell you the day or exact time of when I saw him, as when you're a kid without ambition, summer passes you by so quick you lose track of time. I had a friend with me this time, Justin. He was just like me, a kid with no ambition, little money, and doing whatever he can to entertain himself. The two of us would go around on our cheap bikes, buying snacks with change found in couches, watching TV, playing video games, swimming, etc., etc. On this day, we threw ice cream in a blender and made milkshakes with great value ice cream. It was a typical summer day for us until Justin got bored of the YouTube video that had autoplayed. Justin would look at me and ask, "Did you know we had a basement?" I didn't, and I was intrigued. Justin lives in a house with a family above his home. I just assumed that there might have been a family below us if there was a basement. Justin would then ask, "Do you want to go down there and explore?" Of course, I say of course. We had to go out the back door. The heat was beating down on the two of us. The basement hatch was just to the left of the back door. Justin opened it up and we both went down, Justin leading me. There was no lights. I suppose the light bulbs that were down here had burnt out years ago, someone leaving them on and never coming back down. It was clear that nobody had been down here in a while. Thankfully, Justin had brought a few flashlights with him. There were no doors, only concrete imitating doorways. The cold layout of the basement resembled the home that lay above it, with walls and corners. Other than the rats and lone boxes, the basement was empty. The two of us would scrounge around the loose boxes, careful not to disturb any rats. They were largely filled with garbage. Many of the boxes were filled with old clothes, creepy dolls, and even some jewelry that looked expensive. When we came across anything that seemed like treasure, one of us would cram the thing into one of our pockets. Justin found a ball and we passed it to each other in the dark for a minute before resuming our search. Lots of boring things, old papers we didn't want to read, and dusty books were quickly unpacked. The basement now looked like it was robbed. I mean, depending on how you look at it, we did rob it. "What the hell?" Justin would scream. I would turn around going to see what Justin was swearing over. David, he was blocking the way out. My blood ran cold. That winter from several months before suddenly flooded my thoughts, the cold feeling from that night returning to my face. I now have a better look at this thing. Using the false doorways as a reference, this thing was taller than the typical doors in a house, having to slouch to fit in the damn basement. It had thin hair that was illuminated by the sunlight coming from the only exit, a light that I now so desperately wanted to feel. And its eyes, the pupils filled the entire eye, making them pitch black. Neither me nor Justin could be brought to move. A minute or two goes by of silence. Justin would make a slow inhale. "Who the hell are you? What do you want?" Justin would scream, breaking the silence. The thing smiled, slowly but noticeable. Without taking my eyes off of the thing, I reached for something, anything within a box near me. I grab an old picture frame and stand up once again. I was ready to throw whatever I grabbed at David. Justin began to breathe faster, beginning to panic. "Leave us alone! F off, you freak!" Justin tossed an entire box, this one filled with the old clothing that we didn't want. The box would fall short, coming to the thing's feet. David looked at it. Every move David made was slow, painfully slow. David picked up something from the pile that spilled out of the box. The two of us stopped breathing, waiting for him to attack or defend something. But the thing, David, left. Slowly. Without warning, without noise, the two of us just stood there, unable to move in fear that he was waiting for us. I broke my focus to look at Justin. He looked back. "Hey." I broke the silence, hoping and praying that I didn't just call the creature back to us. "Yeah?" Justin responded, voice shaking. "Let's go to my house." The two of us ran up the stairs, slammed into the back door, grabbing whatever. We got on our bikes and left. We did not speak, not until we were at my home. We acted as if nothing had happened. Justin would spend the night, and the two of us stayed up late into the next morning. Justin would move to his grandfather's a day later, a nice place just out of town. I'd ask about this later in life. Apparently something happened to the family above him overnight. His mom was the one who sent him to his grandpa, and she didn't tell him why until he was an adult. Justin and I would still hang out. We arguably hung out more now. I'd practically spend the entire weekend over at Justin's grandfather's with Justin. Being close enough to town as it isn't a whole ordeal to get a ride, but just far enough out that we could do even more things. All those homes all have large backyards, large enough to do miniature camping trips. Being outside of town meant we could have large fires, fireworks, etc. Justin would end up getting a BB gun. While we never shot at any animals, we would practice our aim shooting at these makeshift targets. The targets we set up were on this dingy shed. We would talk about the basement one day, the weekend before school started. "Do you know what it was?" The question came from Justin. I wanted to play dumb, but immediately knew what he was talking about. "What?" "The thing that trapped us in the basement." Justin paused. "You didn't scream. Did you, see him before?" "Once." "Did he follow you to my house?" "I'm not sure." I shot Justin's BB gun, missing the target entirely. I handed Justin his gun for his turn. "Have you seen him since then?" I asked. "Maybe. It's like I'd see him standing in the corner of the room, but it's just a shirt hanging up." Justin shivered, recalling this memory. "Let's forget about him." "David," I told Justin. "That's what I call him." "Why David? Why did your mom call you Justin?" Justin fired his shot, one ring off from a bullseye. "Dunno." "I call him David for the same reason your mom calls you Justin, because, well, that is just how things go." I paused again, lining up my shot. "I don't know, I'm just a kid." I shot a bullseye. Not too long after this conversation, David would come to see me. Justin was in Minnesota with his grandfather, going on a trip to visit his family. It was the first weekend since school started. I wasn't used to the school schedule yet, so I was staying up late watching Adult Swim or whatever was on that late. I ended up falling asleep in my living room. Tap, tap, tap. The couch I was sleeping on was under the window that was facing towards the street. The window has curtains, but I left the curtains up after closing the window. I wasn't thinking. The TV was on the other side of the room. If someone wanted, they could watch whatever Adult Swim show I was watching along with me, but alas, our TV had this automatic turn-off system so that after an hour or so it would turn off. It means the poor street folk couldn't watch our TV without me. I was dreaming. I forget about what, it doesn't matter, but there's this tapping I hear in my dream. Well, I know now that the tapping wasn't in a dream. The room was almost silent. Darkness was overwhelming. My eyes were adjusted to the dim lit room, the only bright thing being the moon. I didn't move my body. I was tired. I had my eyes half open and taking in the room around me, about to close them when tap, tap, tap. I fully opened my eyes. I hadn't gotten up yet. I shuffled to get up, but that's when I saw David, his reflection in the black screen TV. I froze. My gaze was locked onto David's reflection. He was grinning. His smile was unnaturally large tonight. His eyes were fixated on me, looking down on him. I was defenseless, afraid, and unable to move. I watched this reflection for hours, literal hours this time. Every 10 or so minutes, counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, starting back at 1 every time he tapped on the glass. About the second hour in, I had to pee. I ended up pissing my pants. The wet stain in my pants was uncomfortable and it stunk. I know Mom and Dad would be pissed about me pissing on the couch, but I couldn't be bothered with that seemingly pointless thought right now. Right now, I needed to not move. Another hour would go by, 18 taps an hour, I assumed, 3,600 seconds. The dread I felt was stronger than the need to sleep. Another hour would go by, then another hour of this painful counting, of this tapping routine. And after another 30 minutes, about 6:30, the man frowns. His expression was angry. The anxiety I felt while watching him leave was immeasurable. Once I was confident he was gone, about 5 minutes after he faded from the TV, I ran into my bedroom. I'd throw off my pajamas and underwear, walk into my room, and pass out into my bed. My dad was furious about the piss. It was about 2 p.m. when I woke up. I would exit my room with a dirty towel around my waist, and while heading towards the shower, my dad would stop me. "Why does my couch smell like pee?" I was ready to tell him, but only after I showered. "Can I please go shower first? I can explain it when I'm clean." "Are you hungover? Are you doing drugs? What drugs are you doing?" My dad had a mix of fury and concern. I ignored his questions for now. He allowed me to head into the bathroom, seeing how little I was dressed. I would have to explain it. He wouldn't let go of this if I didn't. The water from the shower head felt amazing. I washed away all the sweat and piss sticking to me. To be in a room with no windows for David to peek into gave me relief. I'd wash everything that day, hair to toes. The water helped wake me up, bringing me out of the drowsy state I was in. I would finish my shower, put clean clothes on, and meet my dad right as I exit the bathroom. I didn't know what to tell him. I know I didn't do drugs that day, but what part of the night was believable? An impossibly tall man who had black eyes watched me sleep? I tried to explain what I saw. Thankfully, he half believed me. He believed that there could have been a man at the window last night, but he also had me drug tested. The results came back negative for all the drugs they tested for. My parents officially were concerned now. This is the second time, to their knowledge, as I had yet to bring up the basement incident, that I brought up David, this creepy nudist who had a thing for their son. We had no security at the time, nothing to prevent a break-in or any sort of crime from happening. That is when they decided to start taking their own jobs more seriously. My mom was hired to be a substitute teacher. It helps pay for small luxury things like on-brand food. My dad eventually got promoted a lot. Even though he did not come from a college degree, he took personal time to study how banking and loans work. And this studying eventually got him a job giving loans to people who want to buy houses and cars and such. It was after one of his many promotions that my dad went to buy security cameras. That would be the last I saw of David in my teenage years. I couldn't tell you why. Maybe David has an understanding of modern technology, maybe he got bored of me, but just because I didn't see him didn't mean that he hadn't stopped visiting me. However, it was January, earlier this year. I had been looking through old photos. I hadn't thought of David since I was 13 all those years ago. I am of legal drinking age now, 10 whole years. As of now, me and my girlfriend are planning on moving in together. I was getting boxes filled with stuff I thought I needed. Looking through my old stuff, I found some old photos from my teen years. Some were Polaroid, some were printed from one of those Walmart kiosks. It was nostalgic looking at me and Justin back in those years. There was a photo of the day I first met my girlfriend, and another after I had my first drink. Then there was a photo of the mountain trip me and Justin and some others had. It was Justin's grandpa who took us and who took the photo. We were 16 at the time. There were 2 other boys, Brandon and Sam. The photo was taken on a Polaroid, but there were 5 figures in the photo. I didn't think much of it until minutes into thinking about all who were there. How the hell did I miss this? The memories of David came back. The snow, the basement, the reflection. There was more photos, some where David was right next to me. The bastard never left me alone. The photos I had went up until my 21st birthday, and checking my phone, I had some photos with him just last Christmas. The Christmas was just last month. My girlfriend came into the room, concerned. "What's wrong, baby? Look at this photo. It was the photo from the mountain trip. What's up with it?" If Doug, Justin's grandpa, took the photo and Justin, Sam, and Brandon are in the photo with me, who is that? I point to the figure. She was worried. It was written on her face, but she didn't say anything before I started showing her all the other photos, one from my birthday, our anniversary, and even one from my grandpa's funeral. "I don't know." Her voice was faint compared to her normal volume. What was she supposed to know? Her boyfriend had gone crazy? I look around my room, pushing things around. I break some things as I opening the curtains of my room and looking out the window. He was there. His face was almost pressed up to the window, just like last time. I didn't know what to do. My girlfriend shrieked from seeing the man there, quickly scurrying out of the room. She called 911, explaining the situation. My mom heard from the living room and came running in. She called 911, explaining the situation. My mom heard from the living room and came running in. It all happened so fast. Mom pushed me to the side. Bang, 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 bang. 4 shots rang through the house. My mom had bought a pistol after the financial situation improved, of course, but she never forgot what I said, the experiences I had at 13. She was ready for this day. David gave an animal-like screech, running away. I got up in time to see him disappear into the night. The cops would question the 3 of us, asking my mom to see the security footage. The footage was corrupted from minutes before I opened my curtain to right after David left. I spent these last few months afraid, not sure what to do next. I would stay inside for long periods of time. I thought she would leave me, but apparently my girlfriend loves me more than I thought, helping me to go through these last few months. But I've been inside for too long now. I hate having to be taken care of. I need to get my life back in order. I'm gonna go around asking about my situation around town, bringing it up to extended family, etc. I hope David had died of the bullets, but just in case, I'm asking if anyone else has had a similar experience. Any advice or clues as to what I'm dealing with is appreciated.